clock right?
Let's have a look.
Yeah. It is.
Yep.
Okay, let's start. Maybe Mariska can do some prayers today.
Sashi Jokshing Meito Tram Rabling Shi Yendegen Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwa Gitrokunam Dak Shingma Chupasho Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niritayami Churang Soki Choknam La Janju Bardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinyang Gipe Sunamki Jola Penchir Sange Drupasho Churang Soki Choknam La Janju Bardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinyang Gipe Sunamki Jola Penchir Sange Drupasho Shurang Soki Choknam La Janju Bardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinyang Gipe Sunamki Jola Penchir Sange Drupasho.
Meditation. So meditation we'll start anyways. The same way that we did last time, which was the Omkar. And have you ever done like an Omkar march where you do continuous Oms?
No. I don't think
I'm going to ring the bowl, and then we're going to Om along. And now you don't have to Om to the frequency of the bowl. And the idea is that we do a continuous round, meaning you don't inhale and exhale at the same time as everybody else. You just, as soon as you're done your own, you inhale and start another one. And so it'll be overlapping. It'll be just overlapping sound, and so you just allow it to happen. Allow yourself to Om whatever note you feel like oming, and you may find that you don't have to Om. You could do oo or ah, or anything that you're inspired, any sound you're inspired to make. And so it's like all of us together will be making some kind of sound, and the bowl will start us off. And maybe let's close that door just to contain the sound a little bit.
So you start and then everybody adds individually?
No, we all start at the same time.
Oh, at the same time.
We all start at the same time, and we'll all continue at the same time.
Okay.
And just when you run out of breath, inhale and start your other Om, and other people will be Oming, and there might be a pause where no one is,
Okay.
but we just keep on going.
Okay.
And it.
Keep the lights on?
What's that?
You want to keep the lights on?
That's fine. Unless it's easy to turn them on.
I can. You want to try it?
Nah, it's way down. You'll see.
Okay.
So the last time we did this, the bowl was the note B. It was a B note. This time it's a G.
How do you change the note?
Well, I can't really change the note. The bowl is a G note. That's a G note.
Oh, you had a different bowl.
I had a different bowl last time. I got 3 bowls.
How can you tell?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
How can you tell which is which?
I could tell if I had another instrument with me. I don't know that's a G. But when I bought it, they told me it was a G. The G note.
But they all look the same. It looks the same as the other one.
Yeah, well, the subtle differences in shape and thickness and size is what. Have you ever played glasses of water, where you put 4 glasses of water, and if you fill one up halfway, one up 3/4, one almost full, and one almost empty, they'll ding 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 ding. They'll sound differently. It's the same idea as this. It's the shape, the thickness, everything about it that creates the note, and how they create it. I don't know if they did it on purpose, or they just did it and okay, this one's a G. I don't know, but. thinking of the idea that you have about you, the ideas, the labels that you give yourself. Start with qualities. Are you kind, generous, jealous, angry, loving? Start to go over your mind some of the ways that you see yourself. What sort of person are you? And then start to go and add more outer details. Country you live in. You're Canadian. Maybe you're not from Canada. Maybe you're from some other country. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What kinds of things have you done? Jobs have you had? Friends that you've had? Cities that you've lived in? What sort of body do you have? How do you feel about your body? What labels do you give your body? And think of yourself as being on the earth, an earthling, an inhabitant of the planet Earth. And the planet Earth circling the sun in some galaxy. In the vast expanse of limitless space, universes, galaxies, in endless direction. Do you think of yourself as having lived just this one life, many lifetimes? These things that you know or just guessing about? to shrink it down from a galaxy, inhabitant of a galaxy, some inhabitant amongst many galaxies, bringing it down to this solar system, down to Earth, down to your city that you're living in, the country and then the city you're living in, the family you're involved with, the people that you're involved with, how you think that they may be seeing you. Now begin to strip all that away. All the ways that, what if you weren't from this country or that some other country that you may be from? What would you be then? What if you weren't all the things that you think that you are? What would you be then? Start taking away the labels. Just dropping them one by one. Notice if it's easy, whether it's difficult to do that. What do you feel is left after all those labels are gone? Could there be anything permanent about those labels? Is there anything about any of those things that could last? Try to locate or feel a sense of a you that's absent, or that is empty of those qualities, that does not inherently have those qualities. See if you can have a feeling of that, or a way of seeing that. And whatever version of that is that you land on, try and stay there, try and hover there, and hold that feeling. And think of the most perfect version of yourself that you can imagine. What are you? A Buddha? Are you a Jesus? Are you a Mother Teresa? Are you a Saint Teresa? What are you offering the world? Imagine, feel like you can don that label, step into that label and live that, be that, based on the fact that you're ultimately none of the other things. So anything is possible. And before we return to the room and open our eyes, give a heartfelt wish that every being in every galaxy, in every direction, would see themselves at the highest potential imaginable, and that they could live and feel fulfilled in that way, and never feel a lacking, never feel, oh, there's more I need to become. And each person will have a different version of what that would look like, would be. So you dedicate your meditation to that happening. And then we'll come back and we'll start the class. Gently returning. Welcome. Be all you can be in the army.
It's like, where's that from?
Famous New York bass player wrote that. Made him rich. Be all you can be. He wrote that song. Be. In the war against mental affliction, knock down the ultimate general who is commander of the other side. Ignorance. See emptiness directly. Dropping an atom bomb on the head of the general of the army of mental afflictions. This is what you're doing when you come here, as you're building this bomb that you're going to drop on the head of ignorance. Maybe we should open the door now so they don't get scared. Let's see if anyone texted me. Downstairs is locked.
Okay.
Joyce. No, that was a tendon.
That was it.
That was a 10 to 8. I told her to text you.
Shall I go do it?
I guess so.
Hopefully you're still there.
strange class. Go forth, my divine sister, and see if Joyce is there. It must be because Carol looks like Cleopatra today.
Cleopatra. Oh. Okay.
The whole world is turned on its side. No one can come to class on time because Cleopatra is in the room. Sharon's across the sea somewhere. Hogan's singing in a choir. Joyce is, who knows where she is now. It's all falling apart.
I'll tell you that Cleo. That was loud and amazing.
I'll bring 2 next time. And then one day I'll bring 3. I'll build up to it.
I've only ever seen metal singing bowls.
Yeah, these are amazing.
What is it glass?
It's crystal.
Oh, it's crystal.
Yeah. It's made of crystal.
Oh, big crystal.
Yeah. I don't know how.
Beautiful.
I'm trusting that it is. They told me it was. I guess I texted the wrong number.
No, the one she can only reach with Wi-Fi.
Yeah. It's all my fault. Oh, I hear chuckling.
See how stalwart people are trusting?
Yeah.
They know.
Did you use the word stalwart?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Impressive.
It means steadfast, kind of like be there, not failing, unfailing.
If anyone would not leave, it would be
love it.
Joyce.
It's awesome.
Joyce, you hung out
Joyce!
you hung out. I'm sorry, I texted the wrong number.
Okay.
I texted to Joyce Google,
Okay.
and I told you to text Christine, which you didn't get.
And I don't have Christine's number anyway, so.
Oh, it was a double failure. It was a triple failure. And Amanda is coming or not coming? She's not coming, okay.
She's not feeling too well.
Well, we haven't actually started class. We've been meditating and talking amongst ourselves. So really, all Mariska will have to send you is the meditation. Maybe you could pause it.
Yeah.
And then
Let's do that. ACI 15
all right, so here we are. So we've been steadily working our way up to highest middle ways version of emptiness. But last class, we didn't quite finish independent because there was one thing that got left out, which was the substantial versus constructed. There's 5 ways. He's telling us about 5 anyways. But before we do that, let's just see if anybody remembers about last class, the three ways, 3 levels of selflessness, according to the independent group. So I also, understand that what's tricky about this, what can be tricky about this, is the word selfless and even the word emptiness. Is that when they say 3 kinds of selflessness, what does that sound like? That sounds like a plus, right? It sounds like 3 things that are. And it's confusing as heck, right? And what they're really saying is 3 ways that things aren't. 3 ways that things aren't. So when you get your head around that, it can be easier to understand. So, does anyone remember what the 3 levels of selflessness were according to the independent group? You shout them out.
Subtle selflessness of persons,
Yeah.
which is the lack of the independent me in control.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. That's one. That was the first one, which was, according to the independent group, the easiest one to perceive, which the listener would and we won't go there. It's too much. So yeah, and then the next hardest one to perceive would be
Gross selflessness of objects.
yeah, the gross selfishness of. And you can remember what that one was?
Yeah, it's like the mind only, things are empty of coming from separate karmic seeds.
Yeah, things are empty of coming from separate karmic seeds. Yeah.
Receiver in the thing perceived.
Yeah, right. So put positively, if you put it positively, it's interesting how it's not the same. It's interesting how it feels differently. But if you put it positively, what would it be?
The perceiver and perceived come from the same seeds.
Yeah, so there's a reason they do this, right? Why didn't we get this whole binder full of mind only says that the perceiver perceiving the object and the object that the perceiver sees and all that is involved in that experience arises from the same karmic seed. Isn't that easy to get? But why then do they make us say it the other way? There's something different about those 2 things. There's something different. There's a flavor that's different about the 2 ways of putting it. When you put it in a negative way, it makes you think, and it's the only way that your mind can think of an absence. It has to be able to think of a thing it isn't. It's like we could say, Amanda is not in the room. And we could say, this room is empty of Amanda. But we couldn't say that if we didn't know what Amanda looked like or was. We couldn't say that. We wouldn't be able to do that. So if somebody else was in the room, we didn't know Amanda, and I'd say, hey, guess what? This room's empty of Amanda. They'd be like, what are you talking about, dude? It wouldn't mean anything to them. So that's the beauty of the gotcha, is identifying the object that we deny. Okay, so Joyce is taking us nicely through number 1, number 2. Can Joyce take us all the way to the top, to number 3?
Maybe. So subtle selflessness of objects.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of long statement about things being empty of empty of not being dependent on a valid perception. I can't say that very well. Like the positive would be they are coming in part from a valid perception and part from the object, so that they're empty of not being dependent on the valid perception.
Yeah, so they're empty of. So it's one step closer to highest middle way, because you've got the mind-only version. So you notice that each version there's less of an object, or there's less of a substantial object quote unquote out there. Mind only is like, yeah, it exists out there as a pen. Independence saying it exists. It doesn't exist out there as a pen until you see it as a pen, but it does exist out there. And it only appears as a pen when a mind which is unafflicted, by things like drugs, alcohol, sickness, jealousy, mad klesha attack, views it and sees it clearly. Then it exists. As that object. And do you remember, so do you remember what the one that they talked about that was like the most gross, the gross selflessness of a person, which they don't even talk about, which was like the idea of some unchanging soul, and they like some kind of golden ball of light that we are, some golden ball of light that maybe some people think of as a soul, and that's like, in Buddhism, we're not that. So that's the gross selflessness to a person. So before we sort of jump into the last class, in a way, even though this was the order it got taught in, we're going to talk about substantial versus constructed reality. And so I'm going to go through them, and what they are different versions of substantial versus constructed that get talked about in the scriptures, and that different people think, different schools think. And as we get moving along, we'll get closer and closer to what actually the independent group says this is substantial versus constructed reality. Okay? So number one is yupa versus mepa. So yupa versus mepa. So yupa means exists and mepa means doesn't exist. Okay, so this is like this is the first one. So it's substantial if it exists in the sense of actually existing, like any existing thing, like this thing, any existing thing, as opposed to something non-existent. So what's an example of something that's non-existent? We say, okay, this is a substantial thing would be this object. It exists as a substantial object. Remember, don't get thrown off. This isn't the highest meaning. This is just people's opinions and schools, right? And then the insubstantial would be something that doesn't exist. Can you give me an example of something that doesn't exist?
Sky.
A sky flower would be an example. Something like a flower that goes in it. But a more sort of pertinent example would be someone who is beautiful from their own side. An angry boss that is angry from their own side. That is insubstantial. So it's like a construct. Something you make up in your mind. And even though, maybe the friend you have that is irritating, you make it up in your mind when you think that they're actually irritating from their own side. They have the nature of being irritating. And that you won't be irritated as long as you're away from them, thinking that they're the cause of irritation. So that's number one. The second one is, say, nupo
Nupo.
versus nume.
Nume.
This is interesting. So nupo means what? Functioning thing. And this is, nume is an interesting word. It means an existing thing that doesn't function. An existing thing that doesn't function. What could that possibly be? What could be an existing thing that doesn't function?
Like empty space. It's permanent.
That's a good example. But in this case, it's cool because they use empty space more in the next example. Because in this case, they want to talk more about functioning versus non-functioning, so they don't use empty space as an example. They use something that, like for instance, well actually we've had it in, like, okay, you've got, let's use pen because we're so used to it. Say, you've got this pen, right? And then we've got a pen, the pen, this pen. Then we've got pen, the concept pen. In the Sutra school, they distinguish between the pen that exists and the concept pen. Okay? The concept pen isn't something that can break down. The concept pen is something that exists but is non-functioning. So according to that school, the archetype pen is something that exists but doesn't function. And this is, as Joyce said, like empty space, but or permanent cessations. That's another thing that exists but is not a changing thing. So that's another example. So then we move to number 3. Say tempa, mingyua, and mitakpa. You guys must know what mitakpa means by now. Changing, yeah. Tempa means stable, and mingyua means not altering. So this is where the example of empty space comes in. So stable and unchanging versus changing. So here, the substantial thing is it's reversed. In number 3, it's reversed. So you've got the substantial thing is like the empty space. Something that's stable and unchanging. Or a cessation, something that's stable and unchanging. Versus anything that's changing. So they're saying, yeah, okay, we've got empty space is a substantial thing. And then all other things are insubstantial, all these changing things. So it's another way they're looking at it. So number 4 is kind of in 2 parts. Say Rangkyatupa. That means self-standing. And then Denmenduje. Yeah. Which is means physical. Neither physical nor mental. Yeah, neither physical nor mental. So we've got self-standing versus being neither physical nor mental. Or self-standing versus other factors. Okay, so here we're talking about, let's go right to explain that. Okay, someone give me, what could be a changing thing that's neither physical nor mental? Remember, right? What's a changing thing that we can't say is physical, totally physical, we can't say is totally mental?
Mariska.
Mariska, yeah. A person, right? It doesn't refer to the concept Mariska. It refers to the person that we see as Mariska, this changing thing. We can't say she's totally physical. We can't say she's totally mental. She's totally mental. So to explain that, okay, so, but what they're talking about here, let me explain that. So substantial here in the sense of being self-standing. So a self-standing thing in this case is something that you can, a physical thing that you can perceive that is self-standing in the way of, like, okay, so if we look at Mariska, for instance, we have to look at her parts, and the mind goes through a process, and we come up with Mariska. But if we look at the color blue, we don't go through that process, it's just blue. Okay? And so substantial in the sense of being self-standing means that anything that you can perceive, physical things that a state of mind perceives without having to go through this conceptual process, blue. So as opposed to the opposite, which we have to go through this process. So those were, like if you're doing your homework, it would be like, I just went through A, B, C, D, A, B, C, and D, and so 4, actually I just kind of said it right, so that'll be fine, you'll get it right, because I did 4 as 1, and in the teaching it's kind of separated, and doesn't, it's separated and then later it gets put back together, so we'll just put it all together at once in the beginning. So now, those are all different substantial and insubstantial things that you'll see in Scripture or that people talk about. Now we're going to get to the Middle Way Independent Schools, their definition of substantial. So we already talked about this last class. When a middle way independent person says no substantial person exists, what do you think they mean?
Independent of the person watching it.
It's actually it's lower than that. It's the lowest thing that they wouldn't even talk about. When middle way says no substantial person exists, this is the gross lack of self-nature to a person. So that's what they're talking about. There's no self that exists in that way. So there's no substantial person, meaning there's no self that is separate from the 5 heaps and controlling the show. So there's no like other me controlling the whole thing. And if that existed, that would be like a substantial person, a substantial self. But it doesn't exist. All right. See how far we get. So let's do a little review of the different flavors of selflessness. So emptiness according to the mind-only school. We could say it's not called itself by definition. It's not called itself by definition. And then number 2. So we're jumping right from mind only into middle way independent group. Things, okay. Subject and object don't come from the same karmic seed. Right? This is so things don't exist that way. So things are empty of not, the subject and object are empty of not coming from the same karmic seed. So this is real emptiness according to mind-only school. This is the peak of mind-only school. Which is interesting because according to mind-only school, after the Buddha was close to withdrawing his emanation and he gave the third turning of the wheel and said, well, this is what I really meant, which then started the whole mind-only school. Subject and object coming from the same karmic seed, that's like their dependent origination. That's how things arise. And their emptiness is, see, it's tricky, right? Their emptiness, their ultimate emptiness is subject and object are empty of not coming from the same karmic seed. And according to them, someday we'll all figure that out. And that all the other schools and like even middle way, highest middle way, will someday come to their understanding of it. Because this is their ultimate emptiness. Okay. And then the next one, there is no unchanging little golden ball of self that flies to heaven or goes to hell, right? This is the lack of an eternal, right? The self, there is no self, right? The selflessness of that. There is no self that exists that way. This is the gross selflessness of a person. According to middle way independent school. And then a little closer to going higher, there's no substantial self-standing self. The mini-me. There's no mini-me pulling all the levers. Increasing the stress. As Lama used to give us great teachings. Right? He would say if there was someone in control, it'd be like what? Captain Kirk in the captain's seat. Okay, increase stress. Right? If there was somebody in control, right? Full thrusters on, jealousy. Bring on the jealousy. And then This is cool. So, and then according to middle way independent group, the number 5 is same as number 2. So same as mind only. So independent middle way, their gross lack of a self to things is the same thing as mind only's highest emptiness, which independent group doesn't accept as the highest emptiness. And then finally, doesn't exist from its own side without it being seen by an unaffected mind. Like the magic show. If you don't get to see it as a horse unless you have that perception of a horse. Here's a nice way of thinking about it. What about if a tree fell in the forest? So according to mind-only school, does a tree fall in the forest if no one is there to hear it? Yeah, Joyce is saying yeah. Anyone else? Does anyone disagree with that? According to mind-only, right, we say that the pen does exist out there. Carol's saying no. Well, the answer is yes. According to mind only, there's a tree that falls in the forest, whether or not anyone is there to hear it or not.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
Okay? According to middle way independent school, the tree has to fall from its own side, and you have to perceive it. Okay? What about middle way consequence school? The tree falls, you hear some decibels, you hear some sound, and you label it, oh, tree falling. You hear a sound, you happen to be frolicking about in the woods, and you hear this sound. You're like, oh, tree falling. And you've labeled the sound. And that's how it exists according to the middle way. And you know, and like Arya Nagarjuna said, and that's all fine as long as you just don't go, you just don't go any further than the decibels, and you'll keep your sanity. Because what about the decibels? What about the sound itself? What about the parts of the sound? It's like, this pen exists. Okay, yeah, sure, cool, man. I'm imputing pen upon the parts. Arya Nagarjuna says, that's all cool. Okay, just you can keep safe in your little white house and contemplate the emptiness of it, as long as you don't try to go into the raw data. And then you're going to start peeling off layers of the onion and come up with zero. And when you're ready for that, you will. When you're ready for that, that will happen. And that's the road to seeing emptiness directly. Is when you can, it's like being ready to have your world be both substantial and insubstantial. All right, now, remember the magic show? That was the big independent way. There's their big presentation. That's their movie that they use to present their ideas. Now, highest middle way has their own little story that they have to present their, and let's have the break first. Yeah, we'll do a little break before we get into that story.
So Hogan offered us chips and chocolate.
What?
Without him being here.
Hogan, you sweetheart. Well, we'll have to. Oh, and by the way, he emailed me and said, please give everyone my love. He's singing tonight, so let's have a little break. I'm going to go use the washroom.
Is he gonna have choir from now on? every week.